Alright, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Adam Veazey, and this is C++ Programming. Lesson 1, we're going to give you a little bit of an introduction into C++ in this lesson. Some of the things we're going to do is we're going to look at what is C++. Why do we want to use C++? How do we use C++? And finally, where do we get the C++ program from? It's very easy to do. It's a free download from Microsoft Visual Studio 2010 Express. I'm going to show you how to get that. I'm going to give you a link and everything like that. But first of all, what is C++? Well, C++ is what's called a high-level programming language. And with a high-level programming language, we don't have to worry about the assembly code and everything like that. We don't have to program in pure assembly. All the hardware specifics have kind of been extracted out or abstracted out for us, and we just let C++ handle all of that. C++ is arguably the most popular programming language in the world because it's been around for so long and it's used for so many things. C++ is actually a descendant of the C programming language, but it has some enhancements to it. The main enhancement with C++ is the addition of the object-oriented programming paradigm. And we can see this with the addition of things in C++, such as strings and vectors. Strings are handled a little bit differently in C programming. Vectors really don't exist in C programming at all. These are additions to the C++ programming language. And we'll explore more throughout the course about object-oriented programming. Why do we want to use C++? Well, the main reason we want to use C++ is for performance reasons. C++ is a very fast language. It's not fast to learn. It does take some time to learn it, but the compiler on C++ is so efficient and so optimized that it causes your code to run very, very quickly on the machine. The main thing about C++, another thing about C++, should I say, is that we can use assembly language to improve the performance of C++. C++ is so close to assembly language that if we want to, we can actually break open the assembler and tweak our code a little bit at the assembly level. We don't have to, but we do have that option. And that will improve the performance of our code some more. So if you're creating like a game, a first-person shooter, what have you, and performance is key, you can actually get in at the hardware level and kind of tweak things under the hood, so to speak. Another thing of why we want to use C++ is style. C++ has a very open style to it. We can create procedural programs, meaning one step after another in like an ordered list. Or we have the object-oriented paradigm that we can use as well. So we can program in an object-oriented manner and in a procedural manner. Whereas with a programming language like Java is purely object-oriented. Everything has to be an object. Alright, and another reason to use C++ is it is so well documented. C++ has been around for so many years that the documentation for C++ is quite extensive. You can search the internet for anything if you have any problems, and there is a forum out there somewhere that has the answer you're looking for. One of the more popular forums out there is a forum called Stack Overflow. Again, just fire up your favorite search engine, type Stack Overflow, and it should be one of the first links out there. So how do we use C++? How do we take the C++ programming language and use it to create programs? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to create source code. The source code is the human-created program. Alright, it's not a program yet, really, it's source code, but the human-created instructions that are going to become the program. Alright, and when we create source code, we have to follow a certain syntax or a certain rules of the C++ programming language. So we use that syntax to create the source code, and then after we create the source code, we compile that source code. And when you compile source code, you're turning your source code into machine language. Now, assuming you have no syntax errors, the compiler will complete the process. If there are any errors, if you broke one of the rules of the language or whatever, it's going to flag it and your program won't compile. And then finally, after our source code successfully compiles, we can execute the program. We can run that program and see our creation come to life, so to speak, like Dr. Frankenstein, sees his creation come to life. So where do we get a compiler for C++? If we need this compiler, then where do we get it? Well, in this series of lessons, we're going to be using Microsoft Visual Studio Express 2010. Now, this is the free version of Microsoft's Visual Studio program. The only real gotcha to using this version is we cannot commercially distribute our programs to people, meaning we cannot sell for a profit our programs. The neat thing about Visual Studio Express is it combines everything in one place. We're going to create our source code in Visual Studio, and we're going to compile our source code in Visual Studio. And when we say visual, we mean it. You'll see what I mean in the next lesson. But everything is so visually there. Back about 20 years ago, all we had was basically Notepad, and you created your source code in Notepad, you fed it through your compiler, got a whole bunch of errors, had to open up your source code file again, make changes, and pray you didn't get any more errors, or you took down the number of errors you had. You can obtain Visual Studio Express 2010 by going to this download link right here. Alright, and let me click this for you. And let's see what we get. Might take a second or two to come up here. There we go. And what you want to do is you want to scroll down here. This is Visual Studio 2013. We don't want that. We want Visual Studio 2010 Express Edition. Now, make sure you get Visual Studio Visual C++, not Visual C#. They are two totally different programming languages. So you want to make sure you get C++. Do not download and install C# unless you want to. You can do that as well, but just use C++ for this series of lessons. Alright, so in summary, we can see that C++ is a high-level programming language. We want to use C++ because it allows us to program in multiple paradigms, both procedural and object-oriented. We use C++ by creating source code and then compiling that source code. And we can get C++ from the Microsoft download site. In the next lesson, we're going to have an overview of Visual Studio 2010 because I'm going to show you how to navigate around in Visual Studio, because if you're really not that familiar with it, it can be kind of confusing, and you can move things around to customize your workspace. And if you accidentally move something, I want you to know how to get it back to where it is, or to where my screen looks like your screen. I'm always going to be using my screen in the default configuration just for ease of use. Alright, see you in the next lesson, and thanks for viewing my video.